What is up, guys? So I usually don't read mainstream media, but this article is different because it's about someone I know, someone whose son went to school with me. Okay? This article is about one of my neighbors. Not immediately one of my immediate neighbors, but someone, a family friend who lives in the same area I live in. Her son's about my age. Her son's 7 months younger than I am. And I went to kindergarten and grade 1 and grade 2 with her son. But this is... And although she's not on good terms with my mom anymore, because she used to be, like, really good friends with my mom, this is the person who I went razor clam digging. This is who I used to razor clams with. Me, my mom, my younger brother, her son, who's like 7 months younger than I am, and went to kindergarten with me, and her. We all went razor clam digging together. We used to go hiking together. Mother's Day, we saw black bears on a hike. So I went to grade school with her son for a couple years. I grew up across town from her son, but I moved into a more urban environment, from the boonies. So now she is my neighbor. Not immediate neighbor, but she is my neighbor. So a short supply of cancer drugs has doctors and patients worried. We're at a critical juncture. A U.S. drug shortage is forcing doctors to reduce doses of chemotherapy. Experts want the U.S. government to protect the drug supply so that over 100,000 cancer patients can get life-saving drugs on time. Sitting in an infusion center last Wednesday afternoon, Elizabeth Arnold wondered whether the cancer drug dripping into her vein would be enough to make a difference. Arnold, 63, was recently diagnosed with advanced uterine cancer. Her surgeon said she needed chemotherapy to knock down the tumors before she could have surgery. But because of a shortage of key medication, she was told she would get 5 bags of the drug carboplatin, not the usual 6. The nurse at her hospital in Anchorage said the facility would probably run out before her next treatment in 3 weeks. "I'm terrified, quite frankly," said Arnold, a journalism professor at the University of Alaska Anchorage and former reporter with National Public Radio. She's caught up in a frightening and frustrating national shortage of essential drugs that experts say has put lives of more than 100,000 cancer patients, particularly women, at risk. "The last 6 months have been the worst in my career, including some of the shortages we had in the peak of COVID. It's just incredibly challenging," said Julie Kennerly Shaw, Associate Director of Pharmacy at the Ohio State University Comprehensive Cancer Center. 14 cancer drugs have been in shortage in recent months, mostly because of supply chain interruptions. Those in shortest supply include cisplatin, carboplatin, platinum-based drugs used to treat gynecologic, breast, testicular, bladder, head and neck, and non-small cell lung cancers. The American Society of Oncology has been working to resolve the shortage, which saw the first glimmers of hope last week after a national delivery of carboplatin, which has been in short supply for a month. "I think we may very well have hit rock bottom and are starting to slowly see more release of drug," said Julie Grallo, the Society's chief medical officer and executive president. "It's not yet clear whether the crisis is ending or whether the supply will continue to ebb and flow." And that's Betsy. That's my friend and neighbor, Betsy. Elizabeth Arnold, with her newly shaved head, is keeping active to improve her chances against uterine cancer. Man, and we're sending positive vibes to Betsy Arnold. Like I said, I grew up with her son, Jack. He's like 7 months younger than I am. You know, I went to kindergarten, grade 1 and grade 2 with him. So, you know. So, none of us knows yet what this means. Is it going to be adequate? Are we going to be practicing week to week? Said Dr. Amanda Nichols-Fader, a professor of obstetrics and gynecology at Johns Hopkins Hospital and president-elect of the Gynecologic Oncology Society of Gynecologic Oncology. We obviously need long-term solutions. So Fader's organization surveyed its members in late April, and only a handful, most of them rural or smaller hospitals, said they were near a crisis point. By the last week, they had heard from facilities in more than 40 states, including some major medical centers, that they were running short of at least one key cancer medication. We're at a critical juncture. If this crisis worsens, every hospital in the United States is going to be impacted. Alternative approaches. Doctors can often give patients a different drug if one is in short supply, Fader said. But cisplatin, which has been limited since February, is often used as a substitute for carboplatin and vice versa. So, limited access to both creates problems. New guidelines from ASCO encourage doctors to stick to the lowest recommended dose and the longest accepted interval between doses. That's why Arnold got just 5 bags of carboplatin instead of 6. It's within the recommended range based on clinical trials, but still, Arnold would have preferred to throw as much as possible at her cancer. And though using the minimum should be enough for most people, Grallo said, we're all worried about the risk to patients and that some patients might be getting inferior care. On Thursday, Grallo received messages from her cancer treatment center in Florida and another in Tennessee that said they were about to start rationing care. She hopes the release of some carboplatin will allow them to avoid that. If hospitals are forced to ration life-saving drugs, Arnold is worried she'll be far down the list. Medications will go to patients with the highest likelihood of being cured. Arnold's dangerous tumor type that was down at number 18 on a rationing list she was given by a Seattle doctor. So, first of all, to get treatment, because there are no good quality oncologists in Anchorage, so she had to fly down to Seattle. That's a 3-hour flight just to get treatment, okay? And not only is she flying down to Seattle to get treatment, she's number 8. The type of tumor she has is number 18 on the rationing list. So she probably might not be, my friend probably might not be able to get her medication. Because under capitalism, it's not profitable for big pharma to produce enough medications to save people's lives, right? They're only giving medication, they're mostly just giving medications first to patients with the highest likelihood of surviving and being cured. And for my neighbor Betsy, which is what we know her as up here, you know, it's a tall order for her to survive because she's at she has a pretty serious illness, right? So, which, you know, it's really hard. Although she's not on good terms with my mom, she's like, and I haven't talked to her in a while. It's still really tough for me. You know what I mean? As someone who grew up with her son, they moved up when I was in kindergarten. They moved up from Seattle. You know, she's from New York originally. So I'm just trying to spread awareness to this situation. Given that she lives in my neighborhood, you know, I grew up with her son. Providing too little chemotherapy might leave patients with terrible side effects but no benefit, or even worse, might make their tumors resistant to the drug, said Dr. Michel Benoit, a gynecologic oncologist in Washington, who has consulted on Arnold's cancer. With the healthcare system already stretched thin, it can be challenging for doctors to identify an alternative course of therapy and then get an insurance company to cover it. These health insurance companies, man, the issue with them is they only care about profit. They don't care about helping people out, and that's because they're capitalists. And that's why we need to abolish capitalism and institute socialism. Fader Society is working with insurance companies to relax prior authorization requirements so patients can get non-standard treatments. Some substitute therapies are just as effective, but might require a different dosing schedule or carry more side effects. Even the fact that some drugs take longer to deliver than others can cause problems, she said, because tightly run infusion centers lack capacity to handle the longer schedules. All these changes require a lot of reworking of clinical pathways and workflows in order to get there. Why there's a shortage of cancer drugs now? Although cisplatin and carboplatin are manufactured by 5 companies, all rely on a single supplier in India that was shuttered over the winter for safety reasons. So the capitalists in India had unsafe facilities, unsafe laboratories to provide these life-saving treatments for cancer patients. And because the conditions were so unsafe, they got shuttered down. So, though some production has resumed, deliveries are behind schedules and supplies are low. Drug shortages have been a problem in the United States for at least a decade. And the shortages were exacerbated during the pandemic, said Bindia Vakil, CEO of Resilink, which provides global supply chain mapping and monitoring. And demand, particularly for cancer drugs, keep rising as patients live longer with their disease. Globally, spending on cancer drugs has reached nearly $200 billion in 2020, according to IQVIA, Institute for Human Data Science. It is expected to reach $375 billion by 2027. The irony is that these essential platinum-based drugs are in short supply in large part because they're so inexpensive. Cisplatin costs $15 a vial and carboplatin $25, said Matt Christian, Director of Supply Chain Insights at U.S. Pharmacopoeia, a nonprofit that sets standards for the pharmaceutical manufacturing industry. Because companies stand to make so little from these medications, they have little incentive to create backup plans in case raw material suppliers or manufacturers run into trouble. Christian said, it's hard to incentivize redundancy if the price is $15 a vial. So capitalism makes a low incentive to make alternative therapies and backup plans in case they can't get the regular medications. And that's why we need to abolish capitalism. Okay? So, and capitalism must be abolished. And also, the platinum-based drugs are delivered by sterile injection, which makes them trickier to produce than a pill. That's why sterile injections are 3 times more likely to see a shortage than the average generic drug. Manufacturers have no incentive to improve their process or product safety. Thus, with such a small profit margin, and because companies don't want to reveal their competitive advantages, production is a closely guarded secret. That's just straight up wrong. I'm going to interject and say that's just straight up wrong. You know, people should be able to get their medications so they can survive, right? So, and that's why capitalism must be abolished. That means that the American medical system doesn't know when a factory is shut down in India or raw material shortage affects the drug supply, so hospitals can't plan ahead or encourage other drug companies to pick up the slack. And the FDA is working to address the drug shortage, said spokesperson James McKinney. I mean, the FDA is a dishonest organization. They lie about 70% of the time, so we can't really trust them. While the agency does not manufacture drugs and cannot require a pharmaceutical company to make a drug, make more of a drug, or change the distribution of a drug, the public should be rest assured the FDA is working closely with numerous manufacturers and others in chain supply to understand, mitigate, and prevent or reduce the impact of intermittent or reduced availability of certain products, he said via email. The FDA understands that manufacturers expect availability to continue to increase in the near future. But that's not enough, Gallo said. Structural changes are needed. Congress should add regulations to require data sharing, offer incentives to protect the drug supply, manufacture more medicines in the U.S., and create a stockpile of essential drugs, she said. The problem with Congress is that they're funded by the FDA. Congress is funded by Big Pharma, and the FDA is funded by Monsanto, which makes carcinogens like Roundup, and they don't want people healthy. Congress doesn't want people healthy. The FDA doesn't want people healthy. So there's no incentive for them to keep people healthy. That's why they put all the preservatives and shit in the food, and that's why Americans are sick, right? Then that's why we need to abolish capitalism. The U.S. government should use its buying power to encourage multiple manufacturers to make essential drugs rather than focusing on the cheapest one and a race to the bottom. Gallo said, it's a vulnerable system that needs to be strengthened. The U.S. Pharmacopoeia has been advocating for what Christian described as a supply chain control tower. The goal would be to increase demand information to raw suppliers and manufacturers so they can better their production in the hospital pharmacies so they could better predict fluctuations in supply. Our goal ultimately is to inform people with insights and help them take mitigative actions, he said. The patient impact is why we're fired up to do this work. Helping people on the ground. Arnold just hopes that changes will come in time to help her live longer. She was a healthy marathoner before headaches, high blood pressure, reading, and a nagging anxiety led her doctor to order a pelvic ultrasound. She was diagnosed a month ago with an aggressive form of uterine cancer known as Seros. It had already spread to her pelvis, stomach, and colon. She was scheduled a hysterectomy, but the surgeon said she wanted Arnold to get chemotherapy first to knock back the tumors. After her first round of chemo, and the first few days after her second, have left her with abdominal pain, which she hopes is caused by cancer cells dying off. One marker her disease improved dramatically after that first treatment, suggesting the medication is making a difference. She's working out every day, running when she has energy, walking when she doesn't, hoping to be among the one-third of people with her tumor type to survive more than 5 years after diagnosis. And that's Elizabeth Arnold, after placing second in her age category in a marathon last year. At a time when she wants to be entirely focused on battling cancer, Arnold and her friends on Team Betsy have been trying to figure out how to ensure she gets the medication she needs. She noted that President Joe Biden has been working toward a cancer moonshot, setting a goal of dramatically reducing cancer deaths. Arnold said she hopes the administration is also focusing right here on the ground. Man, I wish that was true. As someone who lost a relative, because I lost my grandpa to prostate cancer on November 15th, 2021. On November 15th, 2021, I lost my grandpa to prostate cancer, and that was during the Biden regime. So as someone who, in a million years, I wish that were true, I don't see that happening. I don't see Biden standing up to Big Pharma, standing up to the FDA, standing up to Monsanto. I don't see that. I don't see that. I don't see that at all. And, you know, and I don't think Joe Biden is credible in any way, shape, or form. I think Biden is just as bad as Trump. I think all presidents are largely subservient to Big Pharma, or are 100% subservient to Big Pharma, and I don't see Biden improving the situation at all. Okay? So medications like carboplatin are already proven to work, but only if people can get them. And they will save, she said, they will save lives and prolong lives like mine. So yeah, man, this is a tough situation, and, you know, we're hoping the best for Betsy. I texted another friend, another family friend today, telling her to send positive vibes to Betsy, and yeah, we're praying for Betsy to get healthy, and yeah, you know, we miss, like, Betsy just got married like 2 years ago. Like, she and her husband Steve just got married like a couple years ago. And they had, like, because she has a cabin down in Southeast. So they had their wedding out there. So now for her to be in this type of situation, like, I hope she survives, and I hope she feels better, and I hope she gets the medication she needs and the treatment she needs. But this is why capitalism must be defeated. This is why we must defeat capitalism. So people like Betsy can survive. You know, they can be cured. They can be healed completely. And again, this is why we have to abolish capitalism. So, and again, we should not be trusting people like Joe Biden with this kind of stuff. We should not be trusting Donald Trump with this kind of stuff. We should not be trusting politicians who are bought off by Big Pharma with this stuff. We should not even trust Cornel West, because, let's be honest, Cornel West is a Fed. He is a federal agent, right? So, there you go. We can't trust the politicians. We must abolish capitalism. Let's abolish capitalism for Betsy. So, there you go. And that's all I have to say. But like, subscribe, and let's rally around Betsy and support her, and support her husband Steve and her son Jack and her stepson, stepdaughter, and all that. So yeah, there we go. Peace.